because she's mid-season. But I think that injury is really tough because it lingers. No matter how much medicine you take, you can feel fine. You get back out there, one move, one change of direction, and boom, you're right back feeling that same type of pain. So it's going to be a tough injury that she's going to have to manage.
Fans froze as whispers exploded across arenas and timelines everywhere. Lisa Leslie spoke once, and the WNBA world stopped breathing. Her voice carried urgency, pain, authority, history, weight, shock tonight. Caitlin Clark's groin injury suddenly wasn't routine, wasn't quiet anymore. Cameras zoomed, analysts panicked, fans argued fearfully, mercilessly, nonstop online. One update shattered comfort, ripped hope, exposed dangerous uncertainty instantly. Lisa didn't sugarcoat timelines, setbacks, risk, pressure, consequences, stakes looming. She hinted recovery wasn't linear, wasn't guaranteed, wasn't short-lived. Every word ignited alarms inside coaches, offices, locker rooms, markets, futures. Team USA's plans wobbled, playoff dreams trembled, rivals sensed blood. Social media spiraled, theories, fights, prayers, accusations, blame, chaos everywhere. Some claimed secrecy, others screamed mismanagement, rushed returns, negligence, betrayal. Lisa's update cut deeper because she'd been there before. Scars. She knew careers hinge on moments, bodies, timelines, trust, truth. Caitlin's silence thundered louder than headlines, interviews, statements ever could. Every fan asked one question nobody answered honestly yet tonight. How serious was it really, and who knew first now? Markets paused, jerseys froze, tickets questioned, timelines shifted nervously everywhere. Coaches whispered, doctors argued, minutes counted, damage assessed, stakes rose. Lisa Leslie's eyes betrayed worry, resolve, protection, warning, urgency tonight. She wasn't speculating, she was preparing everyone for impact ahead. Caitlin's body had limits, reality arrived cruelly, publicly, suddenly now. The injury wasn't just physical, it threatened momentum, legacy, power. Fans leaned closer, sensing something bigger breaking beneath surfaces now. And before answers arrived, Lisa's final sentence changed everything forever. Long before the word groin hijacked headlines, Caitlin Clark's relationship with pain was forged in silence. Not the dramatic kind that stops games, but the quiet strain that creeps in when expectations pile faster than recovery ever can. She learned early that greatness doesn't wait for comfort. It demands repetition, strain, and a willingness to carry weight that nobody else sees. From high school gyms to sold-out arenas, Caitlin played through whispers of tightness, fatigue, soreness, the unglamorous realities that never make highlight reels. Each season added mileage. Each logo 3 added pressure. She became the engine everyone relied on, the body everyone assumed was indestructible because the smile never cracked. But bodies keep receipts. Inside the WNBA, veterans noticed. The way Caitlin stretched longer. The way trainers hovered just a second more. The way she guarded her movements after explosive bursts. Nothing obvious. Nothing headline-worthy. Just patterns. The kind Lisa Leslie had lived through herself. Lisa remembered that phase too well, the moment when talent outpaces recovery, when demand outgrows durability. She had seen stars celebrated for playing through pain until the pain finally demanded payment. That's why her concern carried weight. She wasn't guessing. She was remembering. Caitlin's rise accelerated everything. More minutes. More travel. More defensive attention. More physicality disguised as welcome to the league. Groin injuries don't arrive screaming. They whisper. They tighten. They flare. They retreat just enough to convince you you're fine, until you're not. Emotionally, Caitlin carried a different burden. She wasn't just playing for herself. She was carrying momentum for the league, for ratings, for visibility, for the next generation watching her every move. Sitting out felt selfish. Rest felt like letting people down. That pressure doesn't heal muscles. It strains them further. Behind closed doors, conversations grew heavier. Trainers talked load management. Coaches talked necessity. Caitlin talked competitiveness. The 3 rarely aligned cleanly. She wanted to be on the floor. The team needed her there. The body was negotiating its own terms. Lisa Leslie watched from afar, recognizing the familiar trap. When you're changing the game, everyone wants access to you. Minutes, appearances, expectations. And nobody wants to be the one who pulls you back. Especially not when the spotlight is this bright. Fans saw dominance. They didn't see ice packs. They didn't see modified drills. They didn't see the internal debates before games. They didn't hear the words manageable repeated like a spell. Manageable doesn't mean healed. It means tolerated. The emotional toll stacked quietly. Caitlin prided herself on availability. On toughness. On answering the bell. Sitting out felt like weakness even when logic screamed otherwise. She'd watched heroes play through worse. She'd been praised for it herself. That praise is dangerous. Lisa knew exactly when praise turns toxic. She remembered the moment she ignored her own body because the league needed her image intact. She remembered how quickly applause disappears when injuries linger. That memory sharpened her tone now. This wasn't commentary. It was warning. When Caitlin finally missed time, the narrative shifted instantly. Questions replaced cheers. Speculation replaced patience. Fans demanded timelines as if bodies run on schedules. Every day out became a debate about toughness, readiness, urgency. Caitlin stayed quiet, absorbing it all. Silence became her shield and her burden. Inside, frustration brewed. The desire to return clashed with fear of aggravation. Groin injuries don't forgive impatience. They punish it. One wrong burst, one overextension, one rushed comeback can turn weeks into months. Lisa's update didn't come from rumor. It came from conversations, from concern shared privately now spilling publicly because the stakes demanded honesty. She knew fans deserved truth even if it scared them. That truth hurt, because it meant this wasn't just soreness. It wasn't just precaution. It was a crossroads, the kind that forces hard choices. Protect the future or chase the present. Neither option comes without cost. Caitlin felt the weight of those choices press heavier by the day. Watching games instead of playing them. Feeling momentum slip while critics sharpen knives. Wondering how quickly love turns conditional when availability disappears. She questioned herself in quiet moments. Did she push too hard? Should she have spoken up sooner? Was rest a betrayal or responsibility? Those questions don't heal tissue. They tear at confidence. Lisa Leslie understood that emotional spiral intimately. That's why her update carried urgency, but also care. She wasn't trying to scare fans. She was trying to protect a player before the narrative turned cruel. Because the league doesn't wait. The schedule doesn't pause. An opportunity doesn't always come back the same. As Caitlin weighed her next step, one truth became impossible to ignore. Returning too soon could cost her everything she'd built, but waiting too long might change how the world sees her forever. And that impossible tension was about to collide with a decision that no amount of talent could escape. The conflict detonated the moment Lisa Leslie's words stopped being interpreted as concern and started being treated as confirmation. What had been whispers instantly hardened into fear. Caitlin Clark's groin injury was no longer a day-to-day situation. It became a threat to timelines, to plans, to power structures that had quietly aligned around her presence. Inside team facilities, conversations sharpened. Doctors didn't argue about pain anymore. They argued about risk. A groin strain isn't just a muscle issue. It's a chain reaction waiting to happen. Compensation leads to imbalance. Imbalance leads to secondary injuries. One rushed return could spiral into months lost. That truth sat heavy in the room, even as outside voices screamed for updates. Caitlin felt trapped between two realities. On one side, her body sent signals she couldn't ignore. Tightness that didn't release, explosiveness that hesitated just a fraction too long. On the other side, everything she'd built demanded she push through. Ratings dipped when she sat. Ticket prices softened. Conversations changed. The league felt quieter without her, and everyone noticed. That silence became pressure. Coaches tried to protect her publicly, but internally, urgency crept in. Upcoming matchups mattered. National broadcasts were scheduled. Team USA discussions hovered quietly in the background. Availability wasn't just about one team. It was about representation, momentum, global visibility. Caitlin's camp grew divided. Some advisors urged patience, pointing to long-term legacy. Others warned that prolonged absence could rewrite narratives unfairly. In sports, perception doesn't wait for medical clearance. It fills gaps aggressively. The longer she sat, the louder doubts grew. Then the shocking twist hit. A leaked training modification report surfaced online, not intended for public eyes. It detailed restricted lateral movement, limited burst reps, and non-contact sessions extended far longer than expected. The implication was brutal. Caitlin wasn't close. Not even quietly close. The injury had lingered deeper than anyone admitted. Fans erupted. Accusations flew in every direction. Why was the severity downplayed? Who knew and stayed silent? Was she pushed too hard earlier? Was this mismanaged from the start? The narrative flipped overnight from concern to outrage. Lisa Leslie's update suddenly made terrifying sense. Her tone wasn't cautious, it was protective. She had seen this movie before. And now the audience realized they were watching the middle act, not the beginning. Caitlin watched the leak spread, heart sinking. Privacy shattered. Rehab details debated by strangers. Her body reduced to bullet points and timelines she didn't authorize. The emotional toll spiked. Recovery is hard enough without millions dissecting every limitation. The team issued a carefully worded response, denying mismanagement while avoiding specifics. That only fueled more suspicion. Silence, once strategic, now looked evasive. Media pressure intensified. Reporters asked the same question in different disguises. Did she come back too soon before? Caitlin didn't answer. But her eyes did. Fatigue replaced fire. The burden of explanation weighed heavier than the injury itself. Behind the scenes, doctors presented an ultimatum. Return conservatively and risk missing critical stretches. Or accelerate rehab and gamble with aggravation. There was no perfect option. Only degrees of consequence. Lisa Leslie privately reached out. Her message wasn't long. It didn't offer solutions. It offered truth. She reminded Caitlin that the league will always ask for more, and bodies don't negotiate. She warned that being brave sometimes looks like sitting down, not pushing through. That message broke something open. For the first time, Caitlin questioned the narrative she'd lived by. That toughness meant availability at all costs. She replayed moments she'd ignored discomfort. The tightness she'd waved off. The times she'd pushed because everyone expected it. The conflict reached its boiling point when a national broadcast announced Caitlin as questionable for an upcoming game, before she'd even been cleared for contact. The listing wasn't medical. It was promotional. Hope used as bait. Fans circled that word like vultures. Questionable became expectation. Expectation became entitlement. Entitlement became pressure. Caitlin felt it in her chest. She wanted to play. She always did. But now every sprint carried fear. Not of pain, of consequence. One wrong move could turn this season into a cautionary tale. Lisa Leslie went back on air. This time, her words landed harder. She didn't speculate. She didn't smile. She said plainly that groin injuries punish impatience and that greatness doesn't mean ignoring biology. The message was clear, even if names weren't mentioned. The league felt it. Suddenly, return timelines disappeared from graphics. Language softened. Evaluated continuously. Long-term health. Damage control disguised as care. But the damage was already done. Fans were split. Some begged Caitlin to rest. Others accused her of letting momentum die. The same people who once praised her toughness now questioned her resilience. The cruelty of expectation revealed itself fully. Caitlin sat alone after a rehab session, ice wrapped tight, scrolling through opinions she never asked for. Her body ached. Her mind raced. The conflict wasn't just physical anymore. It was existential. Who was she without availability? Who was she if she chose patience over presence? And how quickly would the world turn if she didn't return on its schedule? The shocking realization settled in. This injury wasn't testing her body. It was testing her power. Because the decision she made next wouldn't just affect her recovery. It would expose how much control she actually had over her own career. And as cameras waited and timelines speculated, Caitlin Clark stood on the edge of a choice that would either silence the noise or make it explode. The escalation didn't creep in. It crashed through every door at once. Within days of the leaked rehab report, Caitlin Clark's groin injury stopped being treated as a medical issue and started being treated like a crisis of control. Every stakeholder tightened their grip. Teams, media, sponsors, even former players who had stayed silent suddenly found their voices. The injury wasn't just threatening games anymore. It was threatening narratives, revenue, and authority. Cameras followed Caitlin everywhere she went. Walking into the facility, leaving rehab, sitting on the bench. Every step was analyzed for stiffness, every pause magnified into diagnosis. Fans became detectives. Slow-motion clips were dissected like crime scenes. One slight limp sent timelines into meltdown. Behind the scenes, pressure mounted fast. Doctors doubled down on caution. Imaging showed inflammation that refused to fully settle. Not catastrophic, but stubborn. The worst kind. The kind that flares under explosive movement and punishes overconfidence. The kind Lisa Leslie had warned about without ever saying the words. But external forces didn't want patience. Broadcast partners pushed for clarity. Even a limited return helps. Someone suggested in a meeting Caitlin was never supposed to hear about. Limited. As if her body could negotiate half speed at the highest level. As if groins understand compromise. Caitlin's camp pushed back, but cracks showed. Every delay sparked new rumors. Was she scared? Was she being overly cautious? Was this becoming a nagging issue? Language shifted subtly but sharply from protection to doubt. That's when the second major twist hit, and it stunned everyone. Lisa Leslie revealed she had personally reviewed information that never made it public. She didn't name sources. She didn't expose documents. She simply said calmly that this wasn't Caitlin's first flare-up, and that earlier symptoms had been managed, not resolved. The implication hit like a thunderclap. Managed meant tolerated. Tolerated meant risk. Risk meant the injury didn't start where the public thought it did. The reaction was instant and vicious. Fans felt blindsided. Analysts scrambled. Questions erupted about workload, minutes, travel, physicality. Was Caitlin protected enough? Or was she leaned on too hard because she carried too much value to sit? The league stiffened. Statements followed fast, emphasizing protocols, care, and player safety. But timing betrayed them. If everything was handled perfectly, why did this revelation feel so unsettling? Caitlin felt exposed. Not because she'd done something wrong, but because her body had become evidence in a debate she never consented to. Her pain timeline was being rewritten in real time by people arguing about optics instead of healing. Emotionally, something shifted. For the first time, Caitlin felt anger overpower fear. Not at fans, at the machine. The endless demand. The assumption that she would always absorb the cost. That her body existed to sustain momentum, not herself. Rehab sessions grew heavier. Not physically, mentally. Every exercise carried consequence now. Push too hard, and critics would say she rushed. Hold back, and they'd say she lacked urgency. There was no winning lane left. Then another twist deepened the chaos. A respected medical analyst went on air and stated plainly that repeated groin stress in explosive guards often correlates with secondary issues if not fully shut down. Hamstrings, hips, core. The warning was clear without being dramatic. Suddenly, the conversation turned darker. This wasn't about weeks anymore. It was about trajectory. About how one misstep could alter an entire career arc. Fans who once begged for her return now begged for her to sit. The flip was jarring. Caitlin watched the pendulum swing and felt dizzy. Meanwhile, internal discussions grew tense. Team timelines were adjusted. Rotations reimagined. Every plan had an asterisk next to her name. Availability had always been her currency. Now it was uncertain. Lisa Leslie stayed firm. She doubled down publicly, emphasizing that the greatest players are often hurt by their own competitiveness. She spoke about the guilt of sitting out, the temptation to override pain, the cost of listening too late. Her words weren't abstract. They were personal. Caitlin heard herself in them. The second twist fully landed when reports surfaced that Caitlin had declined a proposed graduated return plan that involved limited minutes before full clearance. The reason wasn't defiance. It was fear. Fear of half-speed being more dangerous than none at all. That decision shocked people. Some praised her maturity. Others questioned her desire. The same choice interpreted two ways depending on agenda. Caitlin couldn't control it anymore. Emotionally, the isolation peaked. She stopped scrolling, stopped listening, focused inward. Trusting her body felt harder than ever because everyone else seemed to have an opinion on it. And then the most unsettling realization arrived. This injury had given everyone permission to speak for her. Lisa Leslie recognized it immediately and said the quiet part out loud. When stars get hurt, narratives rush in to replace them. And once those narratives settle, they're hard to undo. Caitlin understood the stakes. If she returned too soon and faltered, the injury would define her season. If she waited and momentum cooled, doubt would follow her just as closely. Either way, someone else was ready to tell her story. As rehab continued, doctors offered cautious optimism, progress, not resolution. The kind of update that soothes professionals and frustrates fans. Time remained the only honest answer. Time, the one thing nobody wanted to give her. Caitlin stood at the center of the escalation, heart racing, body guarded, reputation suspended. The second twist wasn't just about injury history. It was about agency. And as timelines shifted again and expectations collided, one truth became impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark wasn't just fighting to heal. She was fighting to reclaim control of her own narrative. And the next wave, public, emotional, unforgiving, was already building. The fallout hit harder than the injury itself. By the next morning, Caitlin Clark's name trended for reasons no athlete ever wants. Not highlights. Not records. Not wins. Speculation. Fear. Judgment. Every corner of the internet had an opinion, and none of them waited for facts to settle. The groin injury became a mirror reflecting whatever belief people already carried about her. Fans split into camps overnight. One side demanded protection. They flooded timelines with messages begging her to sit, to heal, to ignore the noise. They spoke about longevity, legacy, and the cruelty of rushing bodies that make leagues rich. The other side turned restless. Impatient. Suspicious. They questioned timelines. Commitment. Toughness. As if pain responds to loyalty tests. The shift was brutal. Caitlin felt the love, but it came wrapped in pressure. Every supportive post reminded her how much was riding on her return. Every critical comment dug at the same fear. What if they move on while I'm gone? Stardom is loud when you're present. It gets quiet fast when you're not. Inside arenas, the atmosphere changed. When Caitlin appeared on the bench, applause came, but it carried worry. Cameras zoomed in relentlessly. Analysts spoke in hushed tones, as if volume alone could worsen the injury. Every time she stood, crowds leaned forward. Every time she sat back down, disappointment rippled visibly. Her teammates felt it too. They defended her publicly, but privately admitted the weight was real. Rotations shifted. Roles expanded. Pressure redistributed unevenly. No one blamed Caitlin, but everyone felt the vacuum her absence created. Winning without her felt necessary. Losing without her felt amplified. Lisa Leslie became a lightning rod. Some praised her honesty, calling her the only voice brave enough to tell the truth. Others accused her of fueling panic, of saying too much, of destabilizing confidence. The irony was sharp. The same people demanding transparency now resented it when it arrived. Lisa didn't back down. She clarified her intent repeatedly. Protect the player, not the narrative. She spoke about careers shortened by silence, by optimism that ignored biology. Her tone stayed firm, even as backlash grew. She'd carried this burden before. She knew how lonely it gets when truth interrupts momentum. Media coverage escalated emotionally. Headlines grew dramatic. Language sharpened. Lingering. Nagging. Uncertain. Words that cling. Words that follow athletes long after injuries heal. Caitlin saw them and felt her chest tighten. Labels are harder to rehab than muscles. The league attempted calm. Statements emphasized patience, care, and long-term health. But fans read between the lines. If everything was fine, why the constant messaging? If there was nothing to worry about, why did every update feel so careful? Trust thinned. Emotionally, Caitlin retreated. She stopped doing media. Limited appearances. Focused on rehab and close circles only. The outside world grew louder as she grew quieter. That imbalance weighed heavily. Silence was meant to protect her. Instead, it became another canvas for speculation. At home, the injury felt different. No adrenaline. No crowd. Just soreness, ice, repetition, and doubt. She replayed games she should have been in. Wondered if rest now would matter later. The mental toll crept in slowly, then all at once. She questioned her identity. Who was Caitlin Clark without constant availability? Without the ball in her hands? Without nightly proof that she belonged at the center of everything? Injuries don't just attack bodies. They challenge self-worth. Public opinion continued to swing wildly. One strong rehab clip sparked optimism. One cautious update reignited fear. Fans oscillated between hope and despair depending on the day. Caitlin became a symbol of uncertainty, and symbols don't get rest. Sponsors reacted cautiously. Some paused campaigns quietly. Others doubled down with supportive messaging. Every move was analyzed. Silence was read as doubt. Support was read as pressure. There was no neutral position left. Lisa Leslie addressed the emotional side directly. She spoke about how injuries isolate even when surrounded by noise. How stars feel responsible for everyone's disappointment. How the hardest part isn't the pain. It's the waiting while the world debates your worth. Caitlin felt seen. But the public didn't slow. Talk shows debated whether this injury would change her trajectory. Social media created imaginary timelines. Comment sections turned cruel in pockets. The same fans who once called her unstoppable now asked if she'd ever be the same. That question lingered. Caitlin carried it into rehab, into sleep, into quiet moments when doubt crept closest. She hated that it mattered, hated that she cared. But she did, because careers aren't just built on performance, they're built on perception. The emotional fallout peaked when a national segment asked aloud whether Caitlin should adjust expectations moving forward. The phrase hit like a slap. Adjust expectations? She was injured, not diminished. The backlash to that segment was swift. Fans defended her fiercely. Former players spoke up. The pushback reminded everyone why Caitlin mattered beyond wins. But the damage lingered. The idea had been planted. Caitlin sat with that reality. She couldn't control the noise. She couldn't heal faster because people wanted it. All she could do was choose patience, even if patience felt like surrender to those waiting for her to falter. As emotions surged across the league, one truth settled heavy in the air. This injury had changed more than timelines. It had changed how everyone looked at Caitlin Clark. And whether that change would harden into doubt or transform into respect depended entirely on what happened next. The final twist arrived without warning, and it rewrote everything fans thought they understood. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't a leaked scan. It was a quiet confirmation that slipped out through the one person everyone trusted to tell the truth without protecting optics. Lisa Leslie spoke again, slower this time, heavier. and revealed that Caitlin Clark's groin injury had crossed into a category nobody wanted to say out loud. Not catastrophic, not season-ending, but unstable. That single word detonated the illusion of control. Unstable meant the injury didn't follow a straight line. Good days didn't guarantee progress. Bad days could reset weeks. It meant return windows couldn't be promised. It meant the body would decide, not schedules, not broadcasts, not fans. And it meant something else even more unsettling. Caitlin Clark had been protecting everyone else from that truth. Lisa made it clear without betraying confidence. Caitlin hadn't lied, she'd shielded. She'd downplayed pain. She'd absorbed pressure. She'd tried to carry the league through silence. And now that silence had cracked, the reaction was immediate and raw. Fans who had demanded updates fell quiet. The tone changed from impatience to guilt. Analysts stopped predicting dates and started using phrases like "listen to the body" and "long view." The same voices that questioned her toughness now praised her restraint. Too late, because the emotional cost had already been paid. Caitlin felt exposed but relieved. The truth freed her from expectation and chained her to uncertainty. Unstable injuries don't give answers. They give choices. And choices carry blame no matter which direction you go. Behind the scenes, the league shifted. Schedules were adjusted subtly. Promotional materials changed language. When Caitlin returns became if and when. A tiny edit with massive weight. Words matter when they follow you everywhere. Caitlin noticed. She didn't flinch publicly. But privately, the realization cut deep. The machine had already begun moving forward without guarantees. She understood that reality, and it terrified her more than the injury ever could. Then came the most shocking reveal of all. Lisa Leslie admitted she'd urged Caitlin to shut it down completely. Not for weeks, but for certainty. No soft return. No half measures. No rushed moments to satisfy noise. Full commitment to healing, even if it meant missing milestones no one gets back. That advice split the world. Some called it wisdom. Others called it extreme. The debate raged instantly. But Caitlin wasn't debating anymore. She was listening. For the first time since the injury, she felt permission to choose herself. But that permission came with consequence. Because shutting it down meant surrendering control of the narrative completely. It meant trusting that fans would wait, that teams would adjust, that opportunity wouldn't disappear quietly while she healed. It meant betting her future on patience in a system that rewards urgency. Caitlin sat alone after hearing Lisa's words, ice wrapped tight, phone turned face down. No scrolling. No updates. Just breath and decision. She thought about the little girl who fell in love with basketball before cameras followed her every move. She thought about how fragile careers are when bodies whisper warnings. And then she made a call. Not to media. Not to sponsors. Not to the league. To herself. The next day, the league announced Caitlin Clark would be reevaluated with no set return timetable. Indefinite. The word echoed loudly. Fans reacted instantly. Shock. Fear. Support. Panic. All of it collided at once. But Caitlin didn't speak. She trained quietly. Rehabbed patiently. Refused to perform recovery for cameras. The silence this time felt different. Chosen, not forced. Lisa Leslie stood by her. She reminded everyone that legends aren't defined by how fast they come back, but by whether they come back whole. Her words landed with finality. There was no spin left. Still, the cliffhanger loomed. Because no one knew what whole would look like now. Would Caitlin return the same explosive force? Would hesitation linger? Would the league move on while she healed? Would this injury become a footnote or a turning point? The most dangerous question hung unanswered. What if Caitlin Clark came back changed? Not diminished, but transformed by patience, perspective, and a refusal to be rushed. The world waited. Not for a timetable. Not for clearance. But for the moment she decided it was time. And no one, not fans, not media, not even the league, could predict what version of Caitlin Clark would step back onto the floor when that moment finally arrived. This is the moment where watching turns into responsibility. Because Caitlin Clark's injury isn't just a storyline. It's a test of how this league, this media, and this fan base treat greatness when it's vulnerable. Everyone loves the rise. Everyone celebrates the explosion. But what happens when the body says slow down, and the machine says keep going? That's where you come in. If you believe Caitlin Clark deserves time to heal without her toughness being questioned, say it. Loudly. If you recognize the pattern, stars praised for playing through pain until the pain finally fights back, call it out. If you see how quickly support turns conditional when availability disappears, don't ignore it. Because silence doesn't protect players. Pressure breaks them. Lisa Leslie didn't speak to create panic. She spoke to create accountability. To remind everyone that legends don't come from rushing bodies back onto hardwood. They come from careers that last long enough to matter. Caitlin Clark is bigger than one game, one season, one broadcast window. Treating her like she's disposable momentum is how leagues lose trust. Pay attention to what happens next. Watch how updates are framed. Watch which voices demand patience and which demand urgency. Watch how often the word concern gets replaced with expectation. Those choices reveal everything. And most importantly, remember this. Injuries don't erase greatness. They reveal character, not just in athletes, but in everyone watching them. The way fans respond now will shape how future stars feel about speaking up, resting, and choosing longevity over optics. So if you support Caitlin Clark, don't just wait for highlights. Defend her right to heal. Push back on narratives that confuse courage with recklessness. Share the voices, like Lisa Leslie's, that prioritize players over spectacle. Because when Caitlin Clark finally returns, she won't just be stepping back onto the court. She'll be stepping back into a league that decided in this moment whether it truly values its stars or only loves them when they're indestructible.